is Ehud, as recorded in the book of Judges, chapter 3, really God's assassin? Find out, would you, in the following video.
Then the land was at rest for 40 years, and Othniel the son of Kenaz died. Now the sons of Israel again did evil in the sight of the Lord. So the Lord strengthened Eglon the king of Moab against Israel, because they had done evil in the sight of the Lord. And he gathered to himself the sons of Ammon and Amalek, and he went and defeated Israel, and they took possession of the city of the palm trees, and the sons of Israel served Eglon, the king of Moab, for 18 years.
But when the sons of Israel cried to the Lord raised up a deliverer for them, Ehud, the son of Gera, the Benjaminite, a left-handed man, and the sons of Israel sent tribute to him by him to Eglon, the king of Moab. Ehud made himself a sword which had two edges, a cubit in length, and he bound it on his right thigh under his cloak. He presented the tribute to Eglon, king of Moab. Now Eglon was a very fat man. It came about when he finished presenting the tribute that he sent away the people who had carried in the tribute. But he himself turned back from the idols which were at Gilgal and said, I have a secret message for you, O king. And he said, keep silence. And all the attended him left him. Ehud came to him while he was sitting alone in his cool roof chamber, and Ehud said, I have a message from God for you. And he arose from his seat. Ehud stretched out his left hand, took the sword from his right thigh, and thrust it into his belly.
The handle also went in after the blade, and the fat closed over the blade, for he did not draw the sword out of his belly, and the refuse came out. Then Ehud went out into the vestibule and shut the doors of the roof chamber behind him and locked them. When he had gone out, his servants came and looked, and behold, the doors of the roof chamber were locked, and they said, he is only relieving himself in the cool room. They waited until they became anxious, but behold, he did not open the doors of the roof chamber. Therefore they took the key and opened them, and behold, their master had fallen to the floor dead. Now Ehud escaped while they were delaying, and he passed by the idols and escaped Syria. It came about when he had arrived that he blew the trumpet in the hill country of Ephraim, and the sons of Israel went down with him from the hill country, and he was in front of them. He said to them, pursue them, for the Lord has given your enemies, the Moabites, into your hands. So they went down after him and seized the fords of the Jordan opposite Moab, and did not allow anyone to cross. They struck down at that time about 10,000 Moabites, all robust and valiant men, and no one escaped. So Moab was subdued that day under the hand of Israel, and the land was undisturbed for 80 years.
There you go. Thank you, Stephen, John, and Derek. So this narrative begins in verse 11 by telling you and I that Israel was living in peace, in rest, in prosperity. Come verse 12. Notice how it begins. Then, now, the sons of Israel again did evil in the sight of the Lord. So that is symbolic of sins being committed repeatedly, unrepentant. And look what God did. The Lord Yahweh strengthened Eglon, the king of Moab, against Israel. The name Eglon, it simply means a bully, a bully. So God strengthened a bully, the king of Moab. The name Moab means, who is your father? Who is your father? So God strengthened a bully coming from a tribe whose name, the name of the tribe means, who is your daddy, against Israel. Why? Because Israel had done evil in the sight of Yahweh. So nothing spectacular, so to speak, right there, right? except for the meaning of this enemy, Eglon, which is a bully. And he comes from a tribe. The meaning of the name of the tribe is, who is your father? And he gathered to himself the sons of Ammon and Amalek. So now Israel is having a dilemma. Israel now is facing three enemies. The Moabites, the tribe from which this Eglon, the king, this fat king came from. And then this fat king asked for the assistance of the Ammonites and the Amalekites. So now in verse 13, Israel finds itself facing three separate enemies that conspire together. The name Ammon means great people. Ammonites, great people. Amalek, this is very interesting. Amalek means liquors. Liquors. Implied in that use of the word liquors is blood liquors. Blood liquors. So Amalekites are worse than the Moabites, than the Ammonites. But we have to go back to history, because the Moabites and the Ammonites, they were descendants of Lot. If you remember, Lot was a nephew of Abraham, right? So Lot had intercourse with his two daughters. From these two daughters and the sexual intercourse he had with them, the Moabites came out and the Ammonites came out. What is interesting about these two tribes, the Moabites worship Chemosh. The Ammonites worship Moloch. One of the requirements to worship Chemosh, Chemosh, is human sacrifice. One of the requirements to worship Moloch is child sacrifice. So now you have two enemies Israel was facing at this point, who worship two pagan gods, Chemosh and Molechs, and they both require human sacrifice and child sacrifice. The Amalekites, on the other hand, they worship all kinds of pagan gods, including Chemosh and Molechs, So it says in verse 13, Israel was defeated by Eglon through the assistance of the Ammonites and the Amalekites, and they took the city called the city of the palm trees. That is none other than Jericho. That is none other than Jericho. You find that from Deuteronomy chapter 34, verse 3. Interestingly, Jericho was the first city that Israel conquered. Jericho was the first city that Israel conquered. What is also interesting was the fact that the hero that God would raise up, the tribe that he belonged to, when God eventually allotted the portion of the promised land to the 12 tribes of Israel, Benjamin, which is the tribe where Ehud came from, the land that God gave to the Benjamite included the city of the palm trees, included Jericho. Now, that's going to come handy as we unpack the rest of these verses. So it says in verse 14, the sons of Israel served Eglon, the king of Moab, for 18 years. For 18 years. Coming to verse 15. But when the sons of Israel cried to the Lord, this is the most important verse in this whole narrative. Implying the word cry to the Lord is they repented. They repented of their sins. So notice what God did, what Yahweh did. He raised up a deliverer. His name was Ehud, the son of Gerah, the Benjamite, a left-handed man. There's a lot to unpack here. The name Ehud means I will praise you. I will praise you. The name Gerah means pilgrims or pilgrimage. Benjamin you know, it means son of my right hand, son of my right hand.
Yeah.
Now, when it says that here in the English Bible, a left-handed man, in the Hebrew, it actually means he was paralyzed on the right side. Ehud was paralyzed on the right side. And because of that, he can only use his left side of his body, including his left hand. And you'll see why as the story unfolds, right? So the sons of Israel sent tribute to him, to Eglon, the king of Moab. So now Israel decided to send Ehud to bring annual tribute. In a modern day contemporary version of it will be taxes. Taxes. So when Eglon occupied Israel, including Jericho, one of the things that Israel as a nation had to do is every year or every so many months, they have to bring taxes as a tribute to Eglon. So now they choose Ehud. Without them realizing it, God himself was behind them choosing, appointing Ehud to bring this annual tribute. So you see the sovereignty of God right here, okay? Coming to verse 16, Ehud made himself a sword which had two edges, a cubit in length, and he bound it on his right thigh under his cloak. Now you see why it says right there, a left-handed man, because he was paralyzed on his right side. So he made a sword. By the way, the length of this sword is exactly 18 inches. So you put that 18 inches length of the sword, you go back to verse 14. Israel served Eglon 18 years. You think there's a meaning there? God is onto something right there, right? Notice right here. He hid that sword 18 inches long in his right side under his robe that any Jewish man would have worn so that the enemies did not recognize. Derek.
So in 14, when it says they served the king for 18 years, they didn't serve willingly, right? So they're basically prisoners, not prisoners,
Well,
but they were serving, they were not worshiping, but they were serving them under duress.
yeah, you could say that during this time, if we go back in time, when a nation was occupied, like in this case, the Israel, with Moabites, so to speak, and Eglon, all kinds of bad stuff happening. It's worse than, for example, the nation of Spain occupying the Philippines, right? It's more than just a country occupying a territory. With that, during this time, all things you could imagine that could have gone wrong would have gone wrong. Rape,
Well,
for example.
in other parts of the Bible, they talk about people having servants. And they have them in their houses and they treat them like family, but they still wait on them like a maid or a butler, that type of thing. But that they don't mean that in that case, right?
No,
Okay.
life was hard, life was harsh, and for that reason, the use of the word cried in verse 15. So, literally speaking, because of the occupation of the nation by this fat king, Eglon, because life was so hard and so harsh, eventually they as a nation couldn't take it anymore, and they cried literally to God, and God heard them, and God delivered them. Yeah, so you're right on in the sense that this is not something to be taken lightly during this time when a nation is occupied. History has shown, and the Bible itself has some evidence of it. When Hezekiah eventually was taken captive, Judah, the southern kingdom, was taken captive by the Babylonians. You know what they did to Hezekiah and his family? They put a hook on his nose. They bound their hands behind their back, and then they dragged them like you're dragging animals on the street. So that's just an example of the kind of brutality and cruelty that when a nation occupied another nation during this time, all kinds of unimaginable acts that you could think of, right? So Look at right here in verse 17. So Ehud went to see Eglon. This is very important when it says right here, Eglon was a very fat man. Literally speaking, he is very, very fat. Stephen?
Well, I guess going back to 13, when you say the Ammons and the Amalekites came in and who they were, that alone should tell you that it was beyond just it was chaos. It was probably, you know, with the sacrificial kind of people in there.
Yes, this is why the historical and cultural context come in. When they worship Chemosh that require human sacrifice and Moloch or Molech that require children sacrifice. So imagine the Israelites living in fear, whether their husband, whether their son, whether their daughter were going to be required by Eglon and the Moabites and the Ammonites and the Amalekites just to serve their pagan gods, right? So when it says in verse 17, John,
I was going to say, it's that in relation to him being a greedy man? Is that what it means?
greedy, and also this word fat basically means uh, not only greedy when it comes to food, but greedy when it comes to spirituality. Greedy when it comes to spirituality. If you want to go beyond the literal, the Moabites are symbolic of the power of the flesh. The Moabites are symbolic of the power of the flesh. From that perspective, it makes a whole lot of sense, even in the English Bible, when it says in verse 17, Eglon was a very fat man. So he was using his power to accomplish, to accumulate anything and everything, whether wealth, whether fortune, John,
Give me the Moabites were what again?
the power of the flesh or the inner man that we talk about according to Paul in Ephesians, right? So the Moabites were symbolic of the power of the flesh. The Ammonites, on the other hand, are symbolic of the passion, bad passion, negative passion, not good, positive passion. The Amalekites, on the other hand, they are symbolic of the persistence of the flesh. So if you go beyond the literal, if you interpret Israel as you and I, modern day Christian, notice right here in the mention of the Moabites, Ammonites, Amalekites, you and I on a daily basis are facing the power, the passion, the persistence of our flesh, which is symbolic of Eglon being fat, literally. Making sense? So coming to verse 18, right? So he did what he was supposed to do. Notice right here why God chose him, being a left-handed man coming from a tribe, Benjamin. The name of it means son of my right hand, son of my right hand. So he was born for this purpose. He was born for this time, right? Notice the plan, the brilliance of his plan in verse 19. So he gave Eglon what he was supposed to do, which is the annual taxes, right? The word Gilgal right there, rolling away, rolling away. Notice right there the first hint of victory given by God in the literal interpretation in verse 19. So Ehud turned back from the idols. That's the first sign of a true leader of God. You don't worship idols. You turn back from worshiping idol, which were at Gilgal. So the idols were located. When it says right here, the idols which were at Gilgal, we have to remember the high places. These two words, high places. You'll find them a lot in the Old Testament. The implication of the use of the phrase high places was Eglon, after he occupied Israel, including Jericho, he built shrines. He built shrines in high places where these idols were being worshipped, being served. But notice the first hint from God about a victory coming. The idols were set at Gilgal. The meaning of the Gilgal is rolling away. God is about to cause all these idols to roll away from the land of Israel. So the brilliance in his plan simply is, having done what he was sent to do, to pay taxes, now he approached the king on the pretense that he had a message from Yahweh. He had a message from Yahweh to Eglon. Now stop right there for a second. Think about it this way. How stupid of this Moabite king to believe that Ehud had a message from a God that he did not even worship.
Mm.
Did you see that? Because the Moabites, as I said before, they worship Chemosh. So for Ehud to have a one-on-one audience with him and told him to his face, I have a secret message for you. And notice what the king did. He made the biggest mistake. He let him in. Eglon let Ehud in. So when he got in, when all that the king had in the audience was Ehud, that's when he pulled that 18 inches long sword and he just stick it right into his belly, right? Notice right here the grotesque, the gruesomeness of the aftermath of what he did. 22, the handle went in after the blade, the fat closed over the blade. He did not draw the sword out of his belly, and refuse, waste, came from his belly. Now that's very important because what that means is when God is done doing what he had Ehud to do, anything and everything that is hidden inside the belly of this king will be brought, will be brought, will be exposed. Did you get it? So whoever is that Eglon symbolizes in a current situation in our nation, when God is done and over using Ehud, whoever is Ehud, anything and everything that is hidden in the belly of Eglon is going to be exposed as refuse, as waste. There's going to
That's
be a
good.
lot of exposure, unpleasant, gruesome, grotesque, stinky, smelly, right? Right? How do we know that? Because it says in verse 24, notice what Eglon was doing. He was basically pooping. He was pooping. Did you see that?
And 23 where?
In verse 24, when Ehud had gone out, right? Eglon's servant came and looked, and behold, the doors of the roof chamber were locked. And they said, the servant said, the king is only relieving himself in the cool room. So they thought he was pooping in that chamber up on the roof, when in reality he was already dead. By the time they got to him, he was already dead, because that's exactly what verse 25 said. Therefore, they took the key and opened them after they waited for a while, thinking he was pooping. Then they realized he was dead on the floor. But that's not the end of the story. The best part of the story is from verse 26 to 30. Notice, Ehud escaped from the pursuit of the servants of Eglon, and he went to a place called Seirah. Seirah basically means God, Yah will persist. Yah will persist. So whoever is Ehud, God is raising up to deliver our nation. When he's done doing what he's supposed to do, killing Eglon in a secretive way, in an ugly way at that, God will somehow, some way provide an escape for Ehud. And in the place where God is going to hide him, God will make known to Ehud that he is behind him, that he will grace, empower, enable Ehud to persist, to finish off what he started to do. Taking out a king is one thing. Taking out a kingdom is another thing, right?
Yeah.
Taking out a king took just one man. in this case. Taking out the kingdom is going to require the following. Notice what Ehud did in verse 27. He blew the trumpet. In the Old Testament, whenever we see this phrase blowing a trumpet, it's a call. It's a call for military action. It's a call for military duty. It's a call for war. And where did he blow the trumpet at? Ephraim. The name Ephraim means doubly fruitful. Doubly fruitful. Not just one time being fruitful, twice doubly fruitful. And notice in verse 27, the sons of Israel, all the fighting men, that's what's implied in that phrase, all the fighting men went with Ehud. Went with Ehud. Not only did they go with their leader, they pursued them in verse 28. Why? Because Yahweh has given them, the Moabites, into their hands. Right? So notice how this ended. They went after all the Moabites, so to speak, and then notice right here, they struck down in verse 29, 10,000 Moabites. If you do a little mathematical division, 10,000 divided by 10, 10 being symbolic of completion, right? So that's 3 times exponential completion. So when God is done raising up an Ehud to deliver our nation, when God is done empowering the people to follow Ehud, the end result of that is an 3 times exponential cleaning of the nation, cleaning of the house, cleaning whatever you want to fill in the blank. That's symbolic in that phrase, 10,000 Moabites. Notice at the end of verse 29, no one escaped. It's going to be a swift, it's going to be a speedy, it's going to be a successful deliverance. Derek? Good? So, notice how this story ends. Israel was undisturbed for 80 years. So the first time they rested, according to verse 11, was 40 years. This time around, double the amount of time. This is where the word Ephraim comes in. Remember, Ephraim means doubly fruitful. So instead of resting for 40 years, this time around, they're going to rest for 80 years. So bring it to what happened on July 13th. An assassination attempt was made upon President Trump, right? So we know this story, if you interpret what happened, according to this passage, Ehud is President Trump. Eglon is Biden. Eric?
Okay, so I just had to Google it because I wanted to get the right date. So the last assassination attempt on a president was in 1981, and that was approximately 40 years ago.
Yep.
So we've had 40 years of rest without that attempt on our leader.
Very good. Very good. Now you see how to interpret a current affair by using a passage in the Bible. And notice right here when it ends right here, the land was undisturbed for 80 years. I'm going to tell you something right now. It's going to be prophetic. The fact that he chose J.D. Vance. Did you notice something? How old is he?
39,
37.
39.
38.
How old is President Trump?
72,
79.
78. You divide 78 by 39?
2.
2. You times 40 by 2?
80.
What that means? Prophetically speaking, the possibility exists for J.D. Vance to be the next president. On the grounds, from verse 26 to 29, the sons of Israel, all the available fighting men, all the available American patriots, all the available Christian Americans unite behind Ehud. Not only would we have to unite behind President Trump, but we must pursue our enemies according to verse 28. And when God gave us the enemies, the Moabites, the Ammonites, the Amalekites, notice it says right here in verse 29, no one escaped. No time for compassion. John?
I don't know if you guys have heard this or not, but Trump's team is talking about firing all the civil servants who are not on their side and replacing them, and that sounds like an awesome plan.
Yep.
I wish they had done that last time. You know,
Yeah.
that's like sort of like part of this, getting the group to work with you and take over, you know?
Yes. So, as I said before, when it says right here, uh, how after Ehud stuck that sword into the belly of Eglon, anything and everything in his belly came out, right? What that means is when President Trump is finished with his second term, anything and everything hidden in the belly will be exposed, will be dealt with. Stephen.
So then I'll go back to Revelations. Is he killing the whore of Babylon right now? Is he
Great
taking
question.
out the whore of Babylon?
Yeah, so you could interpret the Moabites, the Ammonites, the Amalekites as symbolic of the three non-negotiable components of the Babylonian system: political, religious, economical. Political, religious, economical. Notice they tried to drain his finances, right? It didn't succeed. Now they tried to kill him politically through an attempted assassination. It didn't succeed. The only thing left, folks, this is the key. They're going to try to get to him religiously. This is where you and I come in, because a lot of these so-called pastors that are surrounding him, if you read the Old Testament, to every king, God brought not a pastor, a prophet. This is the problem. Huge problem. He does not need pastors. What he needs is a prophet or prophets. So, what does that mean for you and I? We need to prophetically pray on his behalf. We need to prophetically making confessional declaration oracles. That's our job. That's our duty. That's our responsibility. When we do that, this passage that we just unpacked will become a reality, will become a history, so that 80 years from today, when we as a people sin again, as how this passage begins, right? That's going to become a reminder. That's going to become a history lesson. If we would repent, as according to in the verse that follows right here, when God strengthened Eglon, the Moabite, to occupy Israel because of the hardness of life and the harshness of life that they suffer under him, they cried out. They repented. When they do that, God is going to bring about, raise another deliverer, Stephen.
So just in being down here, Mimi had her sisters down here the other day. She has three sisters, and out of three of them, two of them are very liberal, and the two liberal ones stayed with us. Don't have a problem with them. We just avoid a conversation. But I did when early in the week, and there was something on the news that caused me to ask her oldest sister, who is it that you're going to be voting for if you can't, and she went and went into an emotional response. Well, that Trump, he's a BS and blah, he did this to a woman, blah blah blah, and I'm not going to screaming like emotional out there. And I said, well, I'm not touching that. But then as it played out Saturday night, I was here and Mimi was coming back home from the kids' house with the two sisters, and she called me, says something going on, and I opened up and I said, sure enough there is, and in the background I said, oh my God, and I think he got shot, and I heard in her back seat a voice saying, there's no way he got shot, that didn't happen, and right there I said, No, I'm watching it play out right here. Get home and you can see it. And she came home, and that emotional loudness that we heard earlier in the week subdued. So I don't think, I can't tell you for sure that she repented, but something inside of her changed. And I have to think all the people that say they hate this man, Trump, had to be affected in to say, I didn't really hate him that much where I wanted them to die, and he doesn't deserve to die. I think a whole switch, a whole spiritual momentum changed on Saturday night when they realized it wasn't a setup. He was only a millimeter from dying. I mean, it was just by the grace of God that he turned his head. And we can challenge that all we want, but the truth is, it was right there.
Yeah, so Chemosh, the name of the god that was being worshipped, right? His name, Chemosh, means destroyer. Moloch means master. Moloch or Molech is just another name for Baal. Baal means master. So as regards to the people that you were alluding to in your sharing, Stephen, those people, their master are not God, are not Jesus. Their masters are Molech, Moloch, Baal, Chemosh. Notice Jesus Christ said the thief comes to kill, to steal, and to destroy. Chemosh is the destroyer. Amalekite is the lickers, blood lickers. For them to lick your blood, they must have killed you first. Kill, steal, destroy. Chemosh is the destroyer. Amalekites is the killer. Guess who is the stealer? You follow what I'm saying here? Now, something happened, John.
I didn't mean to interrupt your middle of I thought you were done there, but uh, I just hope a lot of Democrats were watching the Trump over the last few days, because I thought it was pretty awesome.
Yeah, I'm here to say prophetically, you're going to see more and more of the Democrats crossing over to become Republicans.
That's my question, though. And I just bring it into the political sense. Is God calling us to change the color of our t-shirts, or is he just calling us to wear that shirt? Don't even worry about the color and wear it with honor. Because I'm going to get political. I don't know if I'm supposed to leave the Democratic Party that I've been serving all my life because I'm an honorable man. I don't believe the color of my shirt has anything to do with the honor of the man.
Well, Stephen, if you remember when we visited you last year, right, you gave us a ride around the governor's, whatever you want to call it, mansion, right? And I said to you, New York will turn red. And you watch, it's going to happen. John?
What you're registered as doesn't really matter anyway. What matters is who you vote for, number one. And number two, it's kind of almost like flying in under the radar when you're registered Democrat, because you're, it helps them. It makes them, not living in a state of fear or anything like that because of how many people are registered a certain party or whatever. You fly in under the radar and you vote for red. You know what I mean? Is kind of how I look at it.
Which was good because a lot of my friends from the gun club are all Republicans, and we've alluded to me being potentially put into a position a year ago. Remember, I told you they wanted to run me as the coroner, and it didn't work out. My question is, if that does come about, and I see if I'm a Democrat, it's probably going to fare against me. But changing changing my loyalty to fit in with the narrative, it just seems like it's dishonorable to me.
It is.
But I don't know.
Here's the key: left-handed man. What that means is you go in, like Sean was talking about, unannounced, secretly, as if your right side was paralyzed. See this phrase right here, a left-handed man, you could interpret that as not the ordinary, not the conventional politician, You follow what I'm saying? You're going to see more and more. If you interpret this character, Ehud, beyond just President Trump, bringing it home to you and I, what God is telling you and I, the secret to victory right here is to sneak in to be his secret service agents.
That's good. Hey, and Derek, just so you know, I was asked to run against Kevin Crozier for Albany County Coroner.
And notice the meaning of the name Ehud. I will praise you. So how are we to win this victory? Praising God before he even gives us the victory. I always say, meaning of names of people and places, don't take them lightly. Okay? So I want to unpack what happened to President Trump with being shot at his ear, right? So we know now that he lost a chunk of his right ear. So let's go to Leviticus chapter 8, verse 1. This is very revealing. Leviticus chapter 8, verse 1.
Yep. Somebody was talking about this just last night, Paul. That's funny you said that.
Well, what did it say?
That the ears mean that they were ordained, that that the sons of the Aaron with his sons, they had their ears injured, but then it came. Well, we'll read it. I'm jumping ahead. So it was spoken last night, but it means that they are ordained.
Yeah, so when you become a priest, Aaron as your high priest, he must smear the right lobe of your right ear, the right thumb of your right hand, and the toe of your right foot with blood. What that implies is you have now officially become God's priest. But in the context of what happened on July 13, it was not a high priest who smeared the blood on President Trump's ear. It was the enemy's assassin, right? So how do we interpret that? That's the $1 million question. Was God using that enemy's assassin to anoint President Trump? Yes. The answer is yes. That's a warning shot from God to President Trump to stop hearing and listening to the people that surrounded him that are not telling him the right thing. They were symbolic on the Secret Service failing to protect him. So notice when he realized his ear was hit, he took his right hand, he touched his right ear, and because of that, his right thumb is automatically smeared with blood. What that implies prophetically is if we continue to pray to God, that God will open his eyes to see that some of the people that surround him are bad for him, he comes to that realization he's gonna intentionally, willfully, voluntarily make himself a servant of God, symbolic in him touching the blood on his right ear with his right hand and with his right thumb. Coming to the last item, if you remember, he said, I want my shoes. Remember the story? He was looking for his right shoe, right? The word right in the Bible is always symbolic of in favor of God, being favored by God. Shoe in the Bible is always symbolic of servanthood. Derek?
So the Secret Service took his shoes and threw them off the stage. So he never even put them back on. So there is still a possibility that in the transition or when he got back into his vehicle, he still could have touched his right foot.
Yes. So what you just mentioned right there is very important. Between now and November 5th, there's going to still be people from even within his camp, symbolic of the Secret Service, that will try to prevent him. They will try to hinder him from going back into the White House. This is where you and I come in. We have to start praying and praising God. What is already unfolding symbolic on July 13th, is going to bring to completion. Stephen.
Well, there's no doubt in my mind, and I believe it truly happened, that he had a come to Jesus moment at that. We call it a come to Jesus moment, but I have to think at that moment he surrendered everything to God right there when he realized somebody just tried to take my life and God turned my head. I mean, not even that very second, the minutes and hours that played out afterward. It's just got to be undeniable that God wrapped him and enveloped him. You know what I'm saying? Not even obvious. It's got to be a challenge to him to not say it didn't happen that way.
Yeah, we have to believe something happened in the spiritual realm when it comes to him realizing that he was hit and he could have lost his life, right? So he chose JD Vance. The meaning of the name Vance, Vance, is a marshland, it's a wetland. You know what's going to happen in his next administration? He's going to use fans as the wetland to drain the swamp.
I was going to ask you what you thought of him because you're an Ohio man.
Yeah, he wrote a book, Hillbilly Elegy, based on his personal life's experience. At one time, he was a no Trumper, but he had a personal conversion of faith that changed his thinking process, that caused him to see things differently, including President Trump. That is symbolic of the flux of people that are going to be crossing over, whether from the Democratic side, whether from the independent side, whether from the Rhino side, Republican in names only. A couple things about him that stand out. He's a veteran, number one, right? Veterans under this administration right now, they're being trampled upon. When you think of hotels being open for illegals and the veterans that have been put there under Trump's presidency, prior presidency and administration, they got kicked out. So there's a coming back. There's a coming back. There's a returning of lost people, of lost places that is symbolic of him being a veteran, right? He's also a lawyer. He's also a lawyer. He graduated from Yale. And he is half the age of President Trump, 39. So what that means is the future is looking very promising at this point.
Is he a Christian? I know his wife's a practicing Hindu. I saw that last night.
Yeah, so there is another arena that you and I have to be praying all the more. Although he is a born again Christian, if you want to put it that way, this is where the wife and her belief comes in. This is where we're going to have to war all the more for her conversion, right, Derek?
So similar to Trump, he's also a successful businessman who
Yes.
is his first step into the political arena was being elected senator. He was not a politician before that. So again, he is not a regular guy, but he is a regular citizen. He's not a career politician. So he knows what needs to really get changed.
Yes, in that regard, Derek, he's another left-handed man that God is raising up. Not the career, so to speak, politician, right? Did you notice right here? There's so much in this story alone to be unpacked, right? What is interesting, I'm going to challenge the thinking process right here. There is a commonality between his wife and Kamala Harris. Did you notice that? Both his wife and Kamala, they have, if they trace the ancestral root, it has a lot to do with Hinduism. It has a lot to do with India. Notice right there, Romans 8:28 playing out. Kamala Harris, coming from Indian background with Hinduism tastes and traces that the devil is using to ransack our country, to demolish and destroy our country. God now is bringing into that equation a born-again Christian, J.D. Vance, who is married to an Indian woman. In all things, God works for our good.
Flipping the coin.
Yes, turning the table back to them, serving them a dose of their own medicine, so to speak.
You know,
There,
and there's a oh, go ahead.
And I've never heard the name till like last year, but Vivek Ramaswamy, I thought that was an odd name, but J.D. Vance's son, his name is also Vivek.
yes, yes. Did you notice there was another presidential candidate by the same name? He's also an Indian businessman, also, right? And notice when he dropped out because he didn't see a chance of winning, he supported President Trump. He endorsed President Trump following his withdrawal from the competition.
What an amazing, beautiful picture that he's painting right now, God. What an amazing, beautiful picture. And here's the thing about J.D. Vance. He didn't have to tell about his alcoholic mother, his drug addicted mother. And not only did he have to not tell her, he didn't have to expose her to the public like that. And it was such a proud moment for him last night that how can you not give God glory on something like that? And that being said, his wife is now seeing him in that political arena, and she's gonna see the attacks that Trump's been taking for 8 long years now. She's gonna have to see the strength of his God come through him, so she's converted. And I dare say, and I watched her last night, and there wasn't a lot of smiles. This woman is in a crazy place right now. I have to believe with her son going or her husband going through this and everything.
There should be no surprise to you and I that God would pick to President Trump a vice president whose wife is an Indian of an Indian descent. Notice I hear this word Gera in verse 15. The word Gera means a pilgrim. Imply in the meaning of the word pilgrim is one who is not naturally born. So she's gonna be the Gera. Notice right here, folks, verse 15. Let's process this again so we get the understanding correctly. But when the sons of Israel cried to the Lord, when the Americans cried to the Lord raised up a deliverer for them, Ehud, I will praise you, the son of a pilgrim,
Wow.
the son of a pilgrim, the son of my right hand, Benjamin, spiritually speaking, but physically describing a left-handed man, not the conventional, not the typical hero.
So they showed something last night when J.D. Vance first came into the political arena, and it was his debate with whoever the other senator he was running against, and the
Right.
senator came out and called him a racist, and that what his response was right after that makes me believe that he was set up way even before this. His response is, I have 2 biracial children. Don't you dare call me that, you liar. And basically he came out and he said, you liar.
Yes.
And
So
then
that's,
you saw the Moabite shut down.
yes, that's where his lawyers experience, lawyer schooling paid off, right? Now, I've met his opponent personally, Tim Ryan, the former senator of Ohio, when we were picketing, not this last time, but the one prior to that. So, what do we have here? What we have here is a very promising plan from God. But the
Hallelujah.
answer and the key to this plan of God to be brought to fruition is in the meaning of the name of this hero, Ehud. I will praise you. That's what we need to do from now on. I will praise you, God, for this plan. I will praise you, God, for bringing the pilgrims. If you do a quick study of President Trump's ancestral background, did you know that from his ancestral background, God had raised up missionaries from his mother's side. Check it out. So he himself is the son of a pilgrim in a spiritual sense. President Trump himself is the son of a pilgrim because of the missionaries from his ancestral line, from his mother's side, that God had raised up to be missionaries. So the challenge that lies before us simply is this. We need to continue to pray in light of what happened on July 13th, that he sees himself as God's chosen servant. Stephen.
There's more turning tables now because you just said that. It was the prayers of Trump's mother that got him there, but the prayers of J.D. Vance changed his mother, brought his mother back in.
And can I remind all of us here? It says in verse 11, the land rests for 40 years. It says in verse 30, the land was undisturbed for 80 years. Notice these two words, rest, undisturbed. 40 to 80, that's 2 times. We now have, for the first time in the history of our nation, a First Lady, Melania Trump, and a second lady. Both were not 100% Americans. Both were Gera pilgrims. By the witnesses of 2 and 3, a matter is established by God. So the thief comes to kill Amalekites, to steal, and to destroy Moloch, Chemosh. But God raised up a man who is a businessman, who is not a typical politician, who had been given the taste of the first 40 years of rest in his first administration. Now he's about to finish what God allowed him to start by choosing a running mate who is half of his age, so that their running mate can continue their legacy.
For double the time.
Plus all the walls that the Democrats are putting up for him as stumbling blocks, with the lawsuits and the bad talk they're saying about him, it's all crumbling.
Yes, that's when you know a person is appointed and anointed by God. That's when you know beyond any shadow of doubt, God is moving in the history of our nation. But we need to be like what it says right here, particularly in verse 27. It came about when Ehud had arrived, he blew the trumpet. Did you not notice what President Trump has been doing all through this time? Even in these 4 years when he's not in the White House, he's been blowing the trumpet. He's been calling for every single American to gather, to prepare, to be equipped to go into a war, right? Notice right here, the sons of Israel went down with him. We need to go down with him.
He kept saying that it looks like they're coming for me, but they're really coming for you.
Yes, yes. Implying the use of this phrase, the sons of Israel, is the man, you and I, the leader of our family, the leader of our community, the leader of the school, the leader of the workplace, the sons of Israel. Are we going to go down with him? Notice what happened last night. You think about this for a second. What's the coincidence of Peter Navarro serving a 4-month sentence, not through his own crime, that got released just in time for the convention? And the second one will go to the same, Steve Bannon, just in time for the inauguration. Watch that. Keep an eye on that. By the witnesses of 2 or 3, a matter is established. The first witness is already released, Peter Navarro, having served 4 months. The second one, Steve Bannon, who happened to be President Trump's chief strategist in his first administration. He's going to be released 4 months from July 1st, which would have been November 1st. November 5th is the election. He's going to appear as the second witness for his inauguration.
This is too good.
I've been meditating on this for quite a while by now.
Glory to God, man.
Yeah. God always speaks to us. You hear me say that all the time. We just have to pay attention, and we just have to discern how to interpret the current affair in light of the Bible, not our opinion, not what people are saying. Right ear, right thumb, right foot, right shoes. Those are symbolic of God appointing and anointing somebody to be his servant. The question to be asked is, does that individual realize that he's been appointed and anointed as God's servants? The secret service, who are the people surrounding him?
The Amalekites.
Okay, we have to be praying that he will, learning from his first administration and mistakes and faults and failures, he will be more discerning of who he invites into his inner circle to be his so-called political secret service agent. I hope this has been an eye-opening, a blessing to all of us, motivate us, inspire us, challenges us, provoke us. We need to be the sons of Israel that go down with him from the hill country, from the hill country. Notice right here in verse 28, Ehud said to them, pursue the enemies, for Yahweh has given your enemies, the Moabites, into your hands. We need to believe that. We need to speak that. We need to confess that with no doubt, with no double-mindedness, so that we can go down after our enemy and leave no man behind, and let no man escape. This is not about retribution. This is about finishing off a task. This is about finishing off an assignment. This is about finishing off a plan, God's plan at that.
I'm blown away, man. I don't know how you guys are. I think this was amazing. I can't wait to share this online.
Yeah, I have a question, Paul. Have you sent a note to President Trump to let him know that he needs you as a spiritual advisor?
I don't go that. That's funny because and then the fact that you said that, Derek, is when I post this, I believe I'm hoping that it's going to get directed that way. I'm praying that. I'm not even going to hope it. I'm going to pray it.
I'm just somebody who has too much time to myself, Derek.
But if he calls you in, Paul, don't forget the other guys that came with you.
Well, I've been watching, I've been observing, and I'm just gonna single out an individual in light of what I shared before, that he doesn't need a pastor or pastors. What he needs is a prophet. Paula White. How many of you are familiar with Paula White? So she is the pastor of a non-denominational, spirit-born, spirit-filled church called a church without walls. And we talk about this in Ephesians. According to Paul, no woman should be in charge of spirituality over man. So she was the advisor to President Trump in his first administration. Is it possible, because of that, there was an interruption between the first term and the second term, so that he will see you got the wrong person advising you?
Well, plus he had Mike Pence with him too, and he was a snake in the grass.
Yeah. I mean, you look at the meaning of his word, pence, P-E-N-C.
Repent. Penance.
Is worthless. A pence, if you do a Google of the meaning of the word pence, it's worthless. See, if there's anything you learn from me, folks, the meaning of names of people and places, hidden in the meanings of that names, are God's revelation to you and to I. Right? Notice, isn't that interesting? In verse 27, Ehud blew the trumpet. President Trump's name is in the word trumpet. Trump. In fact, if you Google the word Trump, It's an official English language abbreviation of the word trumpet. Trump equals trumpet, period. So he's been blowing. He's been telling you and I. How many of us are listening? See?
Well,
Time for repentance.
he changed the emotion of I want to even say a country. He changed the emotion of a world when he first came on the scene.
Yes. And you know what's comical about this story that we just unpacked? There's a story circulating about Biden pooping in his pants when he went to attend one of those international meetings with all those other foreign leaders. I'm just saying, folks, if you pay attention and you talk it over to God in your quiet time, God will reveal to you a lot, a whole lot.
That's amazing.
What are the chances? Think of how he's been lately. Doesn't he come across to you as a bullying president, which is exactly what the name Eglon means, a bully? Right? What are the coincidences? Solomon says nothing new under the sun. Solomon also said it is the glory of the kings, you and I, to search the matter out. And that's what we're doing. We're searching the matter out of what happened on July 13 from a biblical perspective, not our perspective. And God will honor us for that. But it's only begun. We got 3 months to go. Until he makes it in there, we cannot afford to be, right? We got to take this seriously. We got to do our part, praying to God and praising God, praying to God and praising God for protection, for discernment. Discernment is what's needed right here, particularly for him to get rid of all these pastors who are only using him for their own fame and fortune at that. Something to meditate on, something to share. The more they know this, the more they are awakened, the more they are becoming the sons of Israel going down with him from the hill country, right? Notice right there the word hill, going up, ascending. We're about to ascend spiritually, naturally, physically, financially. The Dow shot up 700 points the other day. Did you notice that? Just observe. I always say there's so much to gain from observing. I hope the preceding video has been a revelation to you regarding Ehud being God's assassins. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video, and God bless.